What if we were given access to the kingdom? What if everyone was treated equally? And what if no one was excluded? That's what God promises, and that's what we as Christians believe. But it isn't always what happens in the world. What if someone in a wheelchair can't get in your church building because there's steps? Would you provide a ramp? Would you provide access around the side through an open door? Yes, you would. What if your church building is so big that someone at the back can't hear what's being said at the front unless people shout? Would you use a microphone, an amplifier, and speakers? Of course you would. What if you have young children in your church who can't understand some of the readings from the King James Bible? Would you set up a Sunday school, children's groups? Yes. These are all about accessibility, about making your building, your services, your information available to more people, as many people as possible. Okay, thinking about digital accessibility now. Do you have a website, Facebook, social media presence on Instagram, Twitter? Do you use email? And does this let people know where your building is, when your services are, who your team are, the events you're running? Yes, of course. However, what if someone with a visual impairment can't read some of the text on your web page? What if it's pale grey, a small text on a white background? They might not be able to read it. What if someone who's hard of hearing can't hear the audio content in your talk recording, and you haven't provided subtitles, captions, or a transcript? What if someone has arthritis and uses a keyboard instead of a mouse, but they're trying to press a button and the button doesn't work unless they use a mouse? These are barriers. These are things that disable people. These are things that prevent people doing the things they need to do or they want to do. Okay, look at the headlines on your events page. Come to our quiz. Celebrate Christmas with us. Or help us share the gospel in our community. Now imagine a conversation about a poster up on the wall. Can anyone come? Yes, of course. What if they don't know about the event? I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? Well, what if they can't get the information from your website? Oh, well, it's in an email as well. What, you mean a digital version of that poster? Yes, that's the one. But that's just a picture. Yes. And? Well, you know someone who's blind won't be able to see that picture and they won't be able to get the information from it. They need the text in a form on the website or on the page or on your email so they can access it in a different way. Yes, but someone who's blind won't be using the web. They won't be using email. They'll just get someone to help them. Wait. Stop right there. Instead, have you got one of these? A smartphone. They don't operate using keyboards or number pads anymore. They mostly operate through touch and through voice recognition. What if I told you that someone who's blind can use one of these and use it without seeing anything on the screen? They can operate it by touch without knowing where they are on the screen necessarily. And the voice, the text can be converted to speech, and they can also use voice to activate it. Think about that. By the way, do you like my slide? Not this one at the back. I quite like it. I'm quite pleased with it. I think it summarizes my talk quite well, just a few bullet points. What's that? You can't read it. Well, it is pale blue text on a pale blue background. Don't worry, I'm not expecting everyone to be able to read it. It's just for, most people. What if I told you that someone who struggles to use a mouse or a keyboard might use voice instead? Not just to access information on a website or a page, but to actually control the page as well. So they could fill in a contact form, for example, using just voice commands. And what if I told you that someone who's dyslexic might copy and paste text from your website into Microsoft Word, where they can change things like the font, the text size, the color, the layout, not just to suit them or to make it easier, but to actually make them be able to understand and read the content. But accessibility doesn't just happen by itself. You have to design things in an inclusive way. And that means making things work for people using the senses available to them and the means available to them. You need to make sure things, for example, work with a keyboard and not just with a mouse or with a touch screen. You need to make sure things work with assistive technology. Assistive technology is anything that will help someone access something, and that, in this case, in digital accessibility, that's around software or hardware that helps people access things. And you need to test things with real users. It's no good just testing it yourself. You need to get people who are actually going to use it, who have access needs. There is more to it than that, of course, but the basics can go a long way. We need to consider the whole range of human capability across the areas of vision, hearing, speech, motor skills, and cognition, brain. And this isn't just about permanent disabilities. It could be a temporary impairment. So, for example, someone might have an ear infection, which means they can't hear the content of your recording. And they would benefit from subtitles, captions, or a transcript. Or someone might have broken their arm, and they start to use voice technology for a while their arm is healing. So does it work with that? Or impairments can be situational as well. Have you ever tried trying to access something on a mobile device on a train? It can be difficult. You end up with restricted movement in a space. There's movement of the train and vibration. So that makes fine motor control quite difficult. There's also background noise, and that can affect your ability to hear any kind of audio, even if you've got earphones. And there are distractions, announcements, interruptions. Especially coming down on a Saturday, you get a lot of noise from football fans coming down, enjoying themselves. But have you ever sat in the quiet coach and listened to the number of announcements that say, can you please refrain from using your mobile phones in the quiet coach? Can you please avoid using personal stereos? And can you keep conversations to a minimum? And they repeat that about 10 times. It's not very helpful. Also, if you're out and about, sunlight can be an issue. If you're trying to read something and it's low contrast, it can be difficult to read on a small device if the text is small. And particularly on a train, the sunlight at this time of year is quite low. There's some underlying principles to accessibility, and those are that things need to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And I'll just explain a bit by what I mean by those. Something needs to be perceivable means that you need to receive it through one of your three senses of sight, hearing, or touch. In the case of sight, that could be text you can see, but it could be converted to text to speech for someone who can't see it. And vice versa for audio. That could be in the form of captions, so someone who can't hear the information can see it. In the case of touch, that would be someone using what's called a braille display, and they might be blind or deafblind, so that enables them to access things. Things need to be understandable as well. So I could show you a page on gov.uk that's in English, another page in Japanese, and whilst I can perceive the information on both of those pages, I wouldn't be able to understand the Japanese page. So it's about using plain language, it's about avoiding the use of jargon, it's about explaining acronyms and abbreviations at least the first time you use them. Fortunately, the church doesn't use any jargon, do we? Things need to be operable, and that means buttons, form controls, links, media player controls, any kind of complex controls need to be operable by people using the means available to them. So whether that's using a mouse, a touchscreen, a keyboard, voice, or other means. And then lastly, things need to be robust. And that means things need to work across different browsers. It's no good if you just test everything in Chrome browser. Things work slightly differently in other browsers. Things also need to work across different devices. If you've got a website that looks exactly the same on a desktop machine as it does on a mobile device, that's not going to be very responsive. It's going to be very difficult for a lot of people to access. And it also needs to work with assistive technology. So if you need a reminder of why this is important, a couple of things to think about. Firstly, Jesus never excluded anyone. And secondly, when the curtain was torn in two, we were all given access to God through Jesus. It wasn't just for the high priests, it wasn't for the many, it was for everyone. And just to quote Tim Berners-Lee when he talked about the World Wide Web, this is for everyone. Thank you.